I am Reed, I am 27, just an average dude. I've made tons of money mistakes in my 20s, and now I want to share everything I've learned to help you take control of your finances and your life. So a little over a month ago, I left my corporate job. And I know that sounds like one of those flex videos where someone's like, oh yeah, I quit my job and now I travel the world and drink coconuts on a beach every day. But that is not what this is. I am not going to sit here and tell you that quitting your job solves all your problems, because it doesn't. In fact, it creates a whole new set of problems that you need to be ready for. But I do think there is a right way to do it, and there is a very, very wrong way to do it. And most people, unfortunately, pick the wrong way. I've been seeing so many people in our community talk about feeling empty in their 9 to 5 and wanting to leave, and I wanted to share my experience as someone who actually went through with it recently. Not to encourage anyone to make a brash or irresponsible decision, but to show you the behind the scenes of how I planned everything out so I could do this without completely wrecking my financial situation or my mental health. Because, trust me, I've been the guy who makes reckless decisions with money. I was that guy in my early 20s. I was the guy buying stuff I couldn't afford on credit cards. I was the guy living paycheck to paycheck with zero savings and zero clue what I was doing with my life. So when I tell you that leaving my job was a calculated decision, I mean, I really had to learn the hard way what happens when you don't plan ahead. The first question you need to ask yourself is, do you actually want to leave? And I mean, really ask yourself, please, for the love of your sanity, make sure you actually want to leave, because this can be an irreversible decision. Once you walk out that door, there is no guarantee you can walk back in. I've seen people quit their jobs after one bad week, and then 3 months later, they desperate to get back in, and the position is already filled or the company has a hiring freeze. So be real with yourself. Is your job actually that bad, or did you just have a rough couple of weeks? Are there other people who rely on your income? Do you have bills that want pause just because you are chasing your dream? Please do not make a brash decision in an emotional moment. If you are feeling reactive after a bad day at work, just sit on it for a couple weeks. Make sure it is a pattern of hating your job or a pattern of them disrespecting you over months, not just a bad Tuesday. I don't believe anyone should stay in a toxic situation. If your workplace is genuinely damaging your mental health and there is no way to fix it, then yeah, you need to get out. But I also think a lot of people romanticize what life looks like after you quit. It is not like the television shows and the Instagram reels where you see yachts and parties at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. No, it is not that at all. I can honestly say I am probably working way harder now than I was before. The difference is I am working on stuff I actually care about, but make no mistake, it is still work. There is still stress, there is still days where I wonder if I made the right call. If you are quitting because you think it is going to be an endless vacation, you are in for a rude awakening. So let us talk about the math, because this is where most people mess up. Leaving your job is a math problem. Plain and simple, you need to know two things: your monthly burn rate and your savings. Your burn rate is just what you spend every month on rent, food, utilities, transportation, insurance, all the essentials, plus whatever lifestyle stuff you are not willing to cut. Your savings is what you have in the bank that you are willing to put toward this adventure. Divide your savings by your burn rate, and that gives you your runway. That is how many months you have to figure things out before you run out of money. Let me give you a real example from my life. When I was living by myself in the city, I was spending about $3,000 to $4,000 a month on rent, parking, internet, Wi-Fi, and food. That is a lot. That is a scary number when you don't have a salary coming in. So when I decided I wanted to leave my job, I started asking myself, how can I make my life cheaper? My family lives close by, so I made the decision to move back in with them. That eliminated about $1,500 a month in rent and parking, and I split the utility bills with them. That brought my monthly cost of living down to around $2,000 a month. I know not everyone has the option to move in with family, and I am grateful my parents let me do that for minimal expenses, but you get the idea, right? You have to find ways to cut your living expenses. Maybe you get a roommate, maybe you move to a cheaper neighborhood, maybe you sell your car and use public transit. Whatever it is, you need to lower your burn rate as much as possible before you quit. So let's say you have $20,000 in savings that you are willing to put toward this, and your monthly cost of living is now $2,000 a month. That gives you about 10 months of runway. 10 months to figure out how to make your dream work before you have to go back to a regular job. That is not a lot of time, by the way. 10 months goes by faster than you think, so you need to be realistic about whether you can actually build something sustainable in that window. When I left my job, I took about a 90% pay cut. That sounds terrifying because it is, but I also had 2 other income streams coming in. I had stock dividends and I had YouTube monetization, which kicked in right around when I was leaving. So even though my main salary disappeared, I wasn't starting from zero. If you don't have any side income yet, that is okay, but you need to factor that into your planning. You need to think about what costs will go up and what costs will go down after you leave. You want to be driving to work every day, so you probably spend less on gas and transportation, but things like health insurance could go way up, especially in America. I am talking maybe $500 more per month for a decent plan, so you really have to sit down and do the math for your specific situation. Don't just guess, write it all out. The worst thing you can do is leave your job unprepared and then run out of money and have to put everything on credit cards or borrow from family or friends. I've been in debt before and I can tell you it is a miserable place to be. It affects your relationships, your sleep, your confidence, everything. You do not want to trade one stressful situation for another, even more stressful one. So do the math. Be honest with yourself. If the numbers don't work, then you are not ready to leave yet. And that is okay. That just means you need more time to save up or build a side income before you make the jump. Now, let me share my story about how I approach this because I think it is helpful to hear a real example. I actually made the decision to leave about a year before I actually did it. I picked a date that was far in advance. I picked a date after I would be fully vested in my company S investment account because that was free money. I didn't want to leave on the table. I also picked a date where I knew I'd get my annual bonus if I stayed just a little bit longer. So I stayed at my job for almost another year even though I knew I was going to leave because it made financial sense. That bonus and those vested stocks gave me a bigger cushion when I finally did walk out the door. So if your company offers any incentives to stay like stock options or vested benefits or a bonus for hitting a certain tenure, take advantage of that. It is not selling out, it is being smart. You are buying yourself more runway. You also need an emergency plan. What happens if your runway runs out before you've built something sustainable? What if you get sick or injured and can work for a month? What if the economy tanks and your side hustle dries up? You need to have a backup plan. For me, that meant leaving my job on good terms. I didn't storm out. I didn't tell my boss to screw himself. I gave proper notice and I did a thorough knowledge transfer. And because I left with dignity and respect, my old boss actually told me that if I ever wanted to come back, he'd be happy to work something out. That peace of mind was huge. Knowing I had a safety net made the whole transition way less stressful. So think about what your emergency plan looks like. Can you go back to your old job? Can you pick up freelance work? Can you move somewhere even cheaper? Have a plan B and maybe even a plan C? Now let us talk about the mental side because this is the part nobody prepares you for. When you leave your job, you will face mental battles with yourself constantly. I remember walking down the hall at work before I quit and thinking to myself, I am either the craziest or the stupidest person in this entire building or both. That is normal. Anytime you make a big decision, especially one that goes against the traditional life path, you are going to second guess yourself. So you have to ask yourself, are you built for uncertainty? Can you mentally handle having no income or extremely unpredictable income? If you are the type of person who gets really anxious about money and doesn't handle instability, well, you need to be honest about whether this path is right for you. There is no shame in admitting that you need the stability of a regular paycheck. That doesn't make you less ambitious or less of a dreamer. It just means you know yourself. Another thing that hit me harder than I expected was leaving my coworkers behind. If you hate everyone you work with, this one apply to you, but if you have people you genuinely like, it is weird knowing you LAL go from seeing them every day to hardly ever again for the rest of your life. Every job I had, I made a few real friends, people I suffered through bad meetings with, people I grabbed lunch with and complained about the same stuff with, and there was a real sadness in knowing that chapter was closing. It felt similar to growing apart from your high school friends after graduation, so just be ready for that. You also need to make a plan for what your new life looks like. When you quit your job, you don't have forever. If you only have 10 months of runway, those 10 months will fly by. So what do you want your days to look like? What projects do you want to work on? Do you want to start a YouTube channel? Do you want to start a business? Do you need to go find clients? You need to have a plan before you leave because the worst feeling in the world is quitting your job and then sitting there going, okay, now what? You are losing time every day. You don't have a direction. So before you leave, map out what your first week, your first month, and your first 3 months are going to look like. Have specific goals and milestones. Treat your new venture like a job because if you don't, it is going to fail. When you actually decide to leave, be careful who you tell before you make it official. The last thing you want to do is tell a few coworkers that you are leaving and then change your mind before telling your boss. Once people know you are planning to leave, it changes the whole dynamic of your team. It changes how work gets distributed and how management sees you. So keep it close to the chest until you are ready to make it official. And when you do tell your boss, give proper notice. In the US, the standard is 2 weeks. Unless they did something truly terrible to you, be a professional and give them the 2 weeks. Your coworkers have lives and stresses too, and if you just disappear without warning, you are dumping all your work on them. Plus, if you leave on good terms, they be much more likely to take you back if things don't work out. I left a Fortune 500 company twice, and both times I did it the right way. The first time my old boss actually texted me a month later saying he had more job openings and more pay and he'd happily take me back. The second time they said the same thing that helped my stress levels so much knowing I had a fair shot at getting my job back if my entrepreneurial journey didn't work out. So after you quit your job, you drive home for the last time, and honestly, it is pretty anticlimactic. The world is still spinning. You are still just a normal person. But now you have more time to work on stuff. My advice is take a couple days to relax because you earned it. You made a big tough decision. Go outside, work out, unwind, but then you gotta hit the ground running. Remember, you only have a limited amount of time to make this work, so if you get lazy or you waste time, you are probably going to have to go back to a regular job. Use that as motivation. Implement your plan, try things, tweak things, keep going until you get some level of income back and cut back on expensive stuff, especially now, because you don't have that salary to fall back on. I want to be really honest with you though, leaving your job is not a cure-all for unhappiness. If you were unhappy before, don't be surprised if you still feel unhappy after you quit. I feel overall pretty similar to how I felt before, maybe a little more relaxed and I have more time to do things I like, but there is still stress, there is still hard days. And when something comes up that costs $500 to fix it, hits way different when you don't have a steady income coming in. So please don't romanticize this. The freedom feels good, but it is not all sunshine and rainbows. A lot of days still look the same. You are your only motivator now, and you really learn how disciplined you are when nobody is telling you what to do. If you are in a situation where you can leave your job right now, whether it is because you need the paycheck or you are providing for a family or you need the stability for your mental health, there are still options. You can switch to a job that has better work-life balance so you have more energy and time to work on side stuff. You can switch to a job you are more passionate about that feels closer to what you actually want to do. Or you can pour your evenings and weekends into a side hustle. There is no way to sugarcoat it. You are going to have to wake up earlier and stay up later and do what you need to do to build something on the side. I was grinding on YouTube while I was still working my 9 to 5, and that is what allowed me to have income streams already running when I finally made the leap. So if you're not ready to quit yet, start building now. Even if it is just an hour a day that adds up over months and years, at the end of the day, quitting your job is not the finish line, it is the starting line. It is not an escape from all of life's problems, it is a trade-off. You trade the stability of a paycheck for the freedom to build something of your own. And it is a trade that works out for some people and doesn't work out for others. The difference between success and failure usually comes down to how much you plan beforehand. So if you are thinking about making this leap, plan wisely, stay grounded, and be ready to work harder than you've ever worked before, because building the life you want takes time and effort and a whole lot of patience. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.